So this was the first time that we saw Seiya walk into a battle not saying he's perfectly prepared. Could it be that he was worried after facing an opponent that he couldn't deal with himself? Could it be he has something up his sleeve? Who the hell knows, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what led him to not say that, especially with our goddess picking up on it in the future. But I have to say, this was a great episode. They kick it off as if it's going to be so dark, as if, look it, the village massacred. This man killing a wife and child, killing himself. We're gonna summon the Holy Reaper himself. He's gonna wipe the floor with everyone. And then we just got one of the most ridiculous episodes, and it's like, what else could we have done? I mean, the amount of thirst, the amount of sexual tension coming off of these goddesses to how they use that to their advantage to combat scenarios like this. Only in Cautious Hero, which is why we love it so much. I mean, this was awesome, I have to say. I actually like seeing Seiya having to retreat, because we haven't seen him retreat actually since near the beginning when he first started to run away from a god, and then he would, train, then he'd come back, wipe the floor. I thought it was nice to see that return to form where he just starts running. I mean, this is a very dangerous situation. Thought it was actually kind of nice and refreshing to not have him just have another blade or another weapon kind of stored, which is a great gimmick to him being able to one-up the enemy. But if you're gonna say you sacrifice an entire village, absolutely make it challenging for our Cautious Hero, which they absolutely did. And the amount of times that Rista got just screwed around by either getting kicked in the ass, thrown into a portal, or just told she smells like shit. This girl, as crazy as she is, I mean, I kind of felt bad for her in this episode, all while laughing at her all in the process, which was amazing. I like the idea of just watching our character run from place to place and just letting all the gods and goddesses deal with this, because he knows, man, I lost 100 HP out of my 300,000? This is too much for me. And of all the characters, he's probably the safest at this moment, because literally the damage that was done to him was such a fraction that he probably could have found a way to defeat it himself, but this is the Cautious Hero. If he gets hit once, he's out of there. He's gone. He's gonna make sure he flees for his life. So just to see the destruction of this dimension-breaking being that can just come into supposed to be the neutral safe area, and just seeing all the different people just being like, okay, here's my ultimate attack, and then you just see him fly in the distance, or a lot of times you wouldn't even see what happened to him, but you would hear those screams in agony, which was fantastic. And I just love it. I was so happy to see that Seiya pulled his charm, where he went to our crazy yandere goddess and being like, hey, deal with this for me, and just so in love with him that she tries. And I thought, okay, maybe this would actually work, because we've seen her crazy destructive yandere form. I thought maybe she could actually deal with it, but no, of course not. And then just slapping cake in the faces. And I wasn't expecting Valkyrie. It's the most logical outcome, but I wasn't expecting her because we haven't seen her for quite some time. But the idea that Seiya had this plan from the beginning, should he face an opponent that he couldn't deal with, he would lead him to Valkyrie and make sure that, they destroyed something that she cares for. Because this isn't a goddess who's going to willingly work for you, or if you ask nicely, she's got to be pissed off in order to fight. And I thought it was just insane. I was really happy, though, I have to say, that she was able to deal with this, because if they didn't, they would have had to rely on Seiya one-upping the enemy. And obviously, could he? Most likely, but at the same time, I think it's way better for the plot in order to show sometimes he does need the help of others, which then, in result, will train him and get him better in the future. So I thought it was crazy to see that battle take place and how she was doing well, and then she had to use this insane ability which actually sacrifices her own blood to use, but of course it's just all for the sexual pleasure, as the thirst in this series is unmatched, I have to say. And I thought it was actually really interesting how they made Seiya train, but then also it felt like he was disappointed in himself, because it just didn't feel like the same Seiya, right? He wasn't perfectly prepared. He wasn't as, snarky as he always was. Yes, he definitely insulted our goddess and kicked her around, just said she smelled like shit, but it was definitely interesting to see a different side of Seiya, even if only slightly, and then to see just what it led up to of him being in bed with this crazy bitch. And I love how just Rista was crushed. I felt bad for this girl, I have to say, just the whole idea of this child innocence of being if anyone's gonna sleep with Seiya, it's gonna be me, but that's breaking the rules. And he's like, I ain't doing this. And she's like, man, you just don't understand what's going on here. This is all part of training. And you're just like, yeah, I guess it probably is, especially because it's Seiya. He wouldn't sleep with someone. There's probably a different way in order to kind of gain better experience. But it's just the amount of times that Mosh has to get his eyes covered up or something like that. And just the faces, they just keep on evolving. I honestly go as far to say this might have had the best goddess faces to date. The amount of times they just changed her form to be so either disappointed in herself as if she was a failure and she felt like this little puppy with these sad puppy eyes, and it's such a ridiculous situation, but you felt so bad for what was happening to her. And then by the end of the episode, when you see the amazing king just kind of come in, the War Master slicing and dicing, you're like, holy shit, man, this dude, holy, like, man, you should be working with Seiya, you should be training Seiya. Like, this is clearly, he's the best warrior and he's not even a hero. And then I guess after he uses his ability, he turns into an infant, which is like, of course he does. This is the cautious hero. What else would happen to, an amazing person with insane abilities if they weren't a sexual deviant or they turn into a baby after they use their ultimate one-hit KO move? But just the face towards the very end, the last shot that we see, best Rista face to date, I have to say. That's saying a hell of a lot, but it's like the artistic direction of just throughout this episode, you saw her break so much that it was like the perfect way to just shift her character design around to be like, this has actually been the tipping point and there's no turning back for her mentality. We know she'll be able to handle normal dialogue, but I mean, from creating a doll from her own hair and having everyone in the room basically leave, hell, you're not even gonna get your breasts fondled anymore because this goddess thinks you're too weird. This goddess thinks you're too weird. Like, this was hilarious, I have to say. It's nice to see that the final stretch of this anime is definitely going out with a bang, both showing us insane abilities, different sides of Seiya we haven't seen, and then just the absolute comedy absurdity. What was this episode? I love how Cautious Hero still is finding new ways to be cautious. That's literally the entire joke to this show that it's built off of. The cautious persona and how that attaches itself to either enemies or allies or just neutral bystanders. And just the idea of him getting hurt by like 100 HP, we've seen that before, him, being worried of a little bit of damage or using a little bit of mana, but applying it to this entire goddess realm was fantastic because that literally led to nearly the entire realm being destroyed because Seiya wasn't okay with getting a little scratch, a little bruise, so he had to just use his last resort of letting the entire area be destroyed. Also, Valkyrie could deal with the obstacle at hand, and then she could get off because she loves getting hurt herself. It's like, it's Cautious Hero. I mean, it literally has no limits. I honestly think whatever they want to try and how far they want to push the boundaries of the show, it will probably be hilarious, or at the very least, we're glad it was incorporated to an episode, even if we are raising a few eyebrows, like a majority of these characters. And I don't understand why it's so funny. It's honestly the most basic joke. But the idea that either she hasn't showered or bathed in a while, or just people are being assholes, or maybe it's because she has these romantic eyes for Seiya that's getting off a different pheromone or something, I don't know. But the idea that everyone has been insulting her just for smelling bad, it's just like, why? I don't know why that's so funny to me, but it's so great because you expect it from Seiya, you expect it from maybe some of the side characters, but even the leader of like this goddess and god realm is being like, hey, even though you gotta rush, maybe take a bath before you leave. It's like, this girl, like, I love laughing at her, but at the same time, I kind of feel bad at this point. She's a fictional character, she's not real, she's way too horny for her own good, but at the same time, I feel bad for how, like, she's either plucking out her own hairs, Seiya is doing it to her in her sleep. Every other goddess is thirsting for her man that she's like, man, if anyone's gonna get this guy banned, it's gonna be me. It's like, it shouldn't be this funny, but it absolutely is. And I love how they're still finding new ways to shift up the presentation. Like, that's the best part of this show in terms of its anime, is that they still find new ways to shift up the colors around, make it artistic, make it wild, and the amount of times the character models change is amazing. And the actual detail they went into this monster was awesome. It actually felt frightening and as if it was the most dangerous opponent that we fought up until this point. Obviously, more dangerous opponents down the line throughout this episode, but still, just the idea of like every time you slash it, it either splits into two or just repairs itself. Those are some of the best abilities and, just ideas for monsters that you can come up with. Something that is so powerful that even when you damage it, it will just replicate itself and turn into a different form or just split itself apart into multiple forms. Even if they're weaker forms, it's still 1,000 of those is not what you want to go up against, especially when your cautious hero is running for his life. I still think the best part of Seiya's voice acting is how he basically has one range that he's been working off of ever since his introduction. He's very monotone in a lot of ways. He doesn't show a lot of emotion, whether he's running for his life, whether he's insulting you, whether he's beating the shit out of you, he usually stays in that same vocal range. I would be shocked if the actor isn't laughing when he's recording his takes, because the amount of times, I just imagine, you get an idea of what you're voice acting for and you're reading it, you're like, okay, yep, we're cautious, we're run away. you end the take, you gotta be laughing at that from time to time. There's no way you can't because of how absurd it is. Cautious Hero really shouldn't be as good as it is, especially when you look at it at a surface level and how many isekais come out where a majority are absolute ass. But the idea of such a basic premise of cautiousness and applying that to a bunch of isekai settings and ideas, but the idea and how far they took the idea, both with the team as well as the original author, really flexes the difference between someone who knows how to write a decent story, a decent set of characters, and those who just want to copy and paste off of every other isekai of the season, which is a majority of them. But Cautious Hero is a goddamn exceptional series, and I need a season 2 at this point. You know, in the early stages, I was questioning how much would I want to watch, and I was pretty confident I wanted to watch at least 12 episodes of this because it'd be funny. But at this point, I know they can do some interesting things with a more serious story, and the amount of amazing comedy we've seen, I would love a season 2. And based on the fact that pretty much every isekai, even if it's absolute trash, is very profitable, it streams well, the merchandise is well. I mean, I think we're definitely going to see it. I definitely think we're going to see a season 2 at the very least. I don't know if it will come out that soon, but still, I think we're going to see it sooner rather than later. And I think that's a good thing. I feel like a lot of anime, especially with a setting like this, they get more seasons, they get popular, and I would honestly go as far to say they don't get popular for good reasons. Something like this, it feels like even if you don't like its humor, the idea that it's going for is actually unique despite appearing to be the most basic thing in existence, but then with its execution, somehow becomes so original, and the cast of characters across the board are fantastic. Even if a majority of these goddesses are way too sexual for their own good, it feels like they all have an interesting personality, and because they're bouncing off of Seiya, the cautious hero, it feels like they always become something interesting by the end. And whether we're seeing our characters get powered up with like their ultimate dragon form or their spells are getting better, you know, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter because Seiya probably isn't going to rely on them, but at the same time, maybe because he said he wasn't perfectly prepared, he's actually going to rely on more people in the future. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of ways that they could take this and just what we saw in this episode, either go back to what we expected or show us something completely different, and it's all going to work out in the end because that's how damn good the show is. But I'd be interested, what did everyone think of this episode? Because I definitely think it was one of the more unexpected episodes just because of the amount of carnage he applied to this realm just so he could get to Valkyrie. I thought it was definitely an interesting route that they took that probably not a lot of people were expecting, but whatever you're feeling, do let me know down in the comment section below, and if you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you have been new. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.